Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Dolphin Communication Project Deep Dive webinar. Tonight is a very exciting evening. We are going to discuss the plan for comparing video data from drone and underwater perspectives, occasional feline supervision. We are joined by DCP's own Dr. Dudzinski and John Anderson. Thank you both for your time. Busy people, and getting you both at the same time is very exciting. We're very grateful for you all. To those of you listening live, just a reminder that we are recording, and so you'll find your microphones are muted. Just go ahead and submit your questions to the chat. We'll get to those questions at the end. And if you're listening to the recording, thank you very much for joining. And you can email us with questions or message us on social media. With that, I am going to pass the screen over to you two.
Thank you. I hope everybody can see that. Is that visible, Cal?
Yes, cool. Looks great.
And fair early warning. We did have occasional feline supervision, as you can see from these slides down in Roatan. However, at home, we have canine supervision. And right now, one canine is sleeping. They're both in the room with us, but the other one is chewing a variety of different things. So we're not sure what's going on with her. But
well, in Roatan, the felines want to come and see what the drone is. They hear it and they come towards it. At home, the canines run from it. They just completely freak out.
Yeah.
So I try to do this elsewhere at an air park and keep my skills up that way.
Yeah. So with that, I think what we'll do is get started and say thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the program. And our presentation is today sort of setting the stage for why we decided to use a drone for some data collection for specifically a space use project. But then also what we realized is we can use the drone and the behavior footage, the video footage that we get from the drone for a variety of other research projects. So let's see if I can actually get the slide presentation to go forward. There we go. So before we get started and talk about the data, I'm doing this a little bit backwards and giving our thank yous to our collaborators first. And the first set of collaborators, obviously, are Anthony's Key Resort and the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences on Roatan, which is where the dolphins are, because that's where we're studying them. So the fact that they give us permission and help us out and coordinate with us to get access to the dolphins is quite important. We also want to thank and call out to St. Mary's University, specifically Heather Hill in the psychology department and Melissa Carlin in environmental science and sustainability, and several groups of St. Mary's students for whom we did field courses and tested out the early portions of the space use data collection, as well as some of the other student groups that we did with other universities. Not the least of which is Colorado State University, as you can see in the upper right there, and the Go Rams Abroad logo. And their groups are the two groups that we've so far collected data with the drone. We did a proof of concept in 2023, and then we did the actual full, most recent data collection in 2024, this past June. So we'll go into more details later on in the presentation. We also, I want to call out the two students at CMOL, the Charismatic Megafauna Oceanographic Laboratory at Nova Southeastern University, Lexi and Sierra. You'll see one of them later on in the presentation, who are helping to code the actual drone footage that we have. And then last but not least, not listed on this presentation, are the DCP board members for their support, and specifically Don for helping and funding the set of drones that we got and the session for data collection in June 2024. So with that, we did our presentation a little backwards and we gave our thank yous first, and now we'll jump into our presentation. So today, I'm going to chat a little bit. I'm sure this is surprising to those of you who know us, about the science and the research that we're doing. And John's going to chat a little bit more about the methods and the drone and some of the imagery that we're using. So for a little bit of context, space use or habitat use is most often looked at for wild dolphins in terms of habitat use or distribution. Are they coastal? Are they offshore? What's their range extension or their limits? Most of these studies are conducted from the surface where dolphins are, or any of the species that are being looked at, but mostly we're talking about here is dolphins, are observed from a boat or they're observed from shore with a theodolite. They're not being looked at depth. They're not being looked at in the water column. And so this is what's used primarily when you're looking at animals in the wild in terms of their habitat use, their distribution, or their space use. There are some limited studies of dolphin space use during what are called DIPs, or dolphin interaction programs, or human-animal interaction programs in zoos and aquariums. One example is a study done by Lauderdale et al. In 2021, using tags to identify dolphins from 31 different facilities to identify how they used the various habitats that they had exposure to, especially when programs were ongoing versus when programs were not. Most of those studies are conducted because the dolphins have been given a safe use, a safe zone designation, where there's an area where dolphins can go that people are asked not to go during an interaction program, so that they have a place to get away from people if they don't want to interact. I'm sure most of you can understand that there are times when you just don't want to interact with anybody around you. And so you want to have a space that you can go to. Hazel right now is doing that in reverse, in that she's trying to get our attention. So this is not a helpful portion in the space use program. However, when you're looking at space use designations or safe zone designations within a space area where an animal might do interactions, what we don't really know is, do the dolphins prefer those human identified safe zones when they're engaged in different programs? So the study that we did was down in Roatan. I'll show you the full space of where we've collected the data in just a little bit. But this is a photographic view of one subgroup of students looking at a subgroup of dolphins in the main lagoon at Bailey's Key. And our study began in 2018, focusing on bottlenose dolphins in the main lagoon area at Bailey's Key. Of course, nobody did anything in 2020, which was the COVID year, but we started some data collection 2018, 2019, and then continued again in 2021 through the current years. In the first few years, we were just collecting data on paper, identifying the number of dolphins in different areas and maybe some activity levels. We collect these data around my research, as well as during encounters and swims with people that the dolphins are participating in, and then also in dolphin training programs and during baseline data collection as well. And after the pandemic, we figured, okay, we had a chance to look at some of the data, and we were just getting details on where the dolphins were, but not really specific details. So what we did is created a grid, which I'll show you, and then we started taking panoramic photos. And those panoramic photos with iPhones or whatever phone somebody had to use really were associated with every scan that was conducted. And so we did 5-minute bouts where there is a scan at the top of every minute. So 5 scans per 5-minute bout. And we did those scans before data was collected, during my data collection, and after my data collection, or before an encounter, during an encounter, and after an encounter, for all of the different data that's been collected. And some of the data that I'm going to show you in this talk, because, can't have a science talk without some data, will be from a 2-year period, which is June 2021 to March 2023. And we had in those groups between 18 to 21 dolphins in the main lagoon area for all of what was going on. So just to give you a set description of this location, I had to have a little bit of video because, of course, John is here and he filmed this video. There's a little bit of audio in the background, and this is a drone shot view of Bailey's Key and the whole dolphin enclosure there. Off to the left of the screen is where the rest of Anthony's Key would be, and the main lagoon is the big area on the left, and on the right you'll see there's a shallow area and then a few smaller pen areas, and those are for different training programs or research projects. But this is the screenshot that John took from his drone footage that you'll see a few more times in this presentation. And this is the main, so I'm going to use my cursor here. This is the main lagoon area. And you can look in close at the beach here. There's a couple dolphins there. There's a couple dolphins off on the side here, and then over to the side here. This is where I collect my data regularly. This is also where the drone, above which the drone is flown. This bigger dock right here is the dock that guests and students and all of us walk on to go into this area to get ready to do any of our programs. This building right here is the palapa. This little area in this corner right here is the water taxi stand, which is where we all arrive. You have these little projections, which are called finger docks, which offer stability to the dock. This is a dock all the way around the main lagoon and out to here where trainers and people walk on. These three awnings are over the platforms, which are numbered from the water taxi clockwise. So platform 1, platform 2, platform 3. And then you have these blue mobile platforms. This particular platform right here on the right, the entry area to the main lagoon from this palapa, from this gazebo area, is where I go into the water to collect my data and where I come out of the water after collecting data. So this whole main lagoon area is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this particular presentation. Do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. Oh, one last thing. For when the encounters and the swim programs are ongoing and people are actually in this lagoon with the dolphins, from this first finger dock right here around the water taxi stand with a line sort of up to the shallows, this area here near the palapa is what the facility has designated the safe zone for the dolphins. So people are asked not to swim in this particular area right here, but they can go into the whole area out here. So what we wanted to see is with the space use study, do the dolphins prefer this area? Do they use it regularly? Is it an area that could be used as a safe zone during dolphin interaction programs, dolphin swims, dolphin encounters? So our space use objectives is to analyze how dolphins are using their area with respect to human presence. So with the research, the data collection, and then once we get those locations of the dolphins where they are, we'll use GIS, geographic information systeming, to plot where these animals are. So in order to understand if dolphins prefer a safe zone area, we actually need to understand how they use that space in the whole lagoon area. And so once we know how they use the whole space with a variety of different programs, baseline time with my research and et cetera, then we can look to see, are they shifting to their use of that particular area when people are in the water? And then secondarily, this program, this research project allows us to train the undergraduate students who join us on field courses with field research and data collection procedures, because there's data on clipboards, there's photographic data, and then there's the analysis of some of that, which some of the students help us with. So it's an all-encompassing research project, not just for the data that we're collecting, but also to share that procedure and protocol with the students who are working with us. So this is the grid, and I've explained sort of the whole area, which we've labeled here. This is the palapa. This is sort of a reverse of the first photograph that I showed you. The water taxi stand up here. North is behind the palapa, if you will. And you have the red line that outlines the whole main lagoon. You have this. If you see these designations, the blue circle is where I go in and out of the water each time. And then the purple circles are around the platforms and the palapa, where we collect the space use data with the students, where we have them situated and set to be able to collect the data around the whole area. And what we've done, what Melissa Carlin did, who's one of our colleagues from St. Mary's, is laid grids over this map so that we have 9 squares that are sort of equal in area, take a little liberty there, to break it up so we can say, okay, there's dolphins in A1, B1, C1, or A1, A2, B2, C2, etc., where we're placing them when we do the panoramic photos to identify where they are to be able to plot them in GPS. And we'll do the same when we use the drone data as well. But we don't tell the students that basically A1, B1, and C1 is the safe zone area, because we don't want to bias them when they're collecting the data. We talk about that at the end of the week to let them know why this is going on. So hopefully students won't watch this webinar, before they come into the field with us again. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of panoramic shots because the students will collect the data. They'll have a clipboard. Somebody will be writing down. Somebody will be counting dolphins and looking at activity levels. And then we have one student taking a panoramic photo. And from the panoramic photo, at the top of each of those scan minutes is when we count the dolphins. So here's an example of a panoramic shot. This was taken sort of in that southeast corner where platform 2 is this platform right here. Platform 3 is behind it. And then platform 1 is over here. Panoramic photos really distort
really do
the view of what's there. So this is to give you an idea that the palapa would be back over here. And then we have another view right here. Ideally, what you want to do is take the panoramic photo and then be able to count the dolphins in that. And not every photo is as great as this one, where you have, a dolphin right down here in the foreground. But you can see some students here, one taking notes, somebody making observations, and of course the photo being taken is by the person who is part of the group on platform 1. And you can see you have a group here on platform 2 and one on platform 3. And then there is a group on the palapa. This photo is from when in June 2024. So we actually took advantage of the fact that the drone was there and put students on every one of the platforms and the palapa to collect the data. So this is another example taken from the other side of platform 1. And you can see right here, there's what looks like a couple of dolphins. Well, with the panoramic shots, when students are trying to get the location of the dolphins given different grids, they can zoom in. Let's see if, yep, okay. I can zoom in. And this is what the students do when they're coding the panoramic photos, is they'll zoom in and they'll say, okay, there's one dolphin here, there's one dolphin here, and one dolphin here. This to the left of the dolphin is my head and snorkel. And so I'm in there. You can see me in some of the panoramic photos as well. And what they would do is take this photo and then scan through. So there's another dolphin right here. And they would scan through each section of the photo, counting dolphins where they are, what they have, where they are for placements of the dolphins to get the locations. And they do this by using Google Earth. And they open up Google Earth and they know where the spots are. And then they put the pin on Google Earth to get the latitude and longitude to be able to run GIS. So here's another example. And you can see there's maybe some behavior that's visible. If you zoom in, you have the dolphin's fluke and tail stalk up right here. You have another dolphin right here and this, by the way, this dorsal fin is Buzz. We actually can identify some of the dolphins in these panoramic photos as well as from the drone footage. And you have another dorsal fin right here. And then, of course, my head and snorkel right there.
But also you'd be able to ID all 3 animals from the underwater footage.
Yes.
So you know exactly who they are.
Yep. So this is where we can look at the pano photos and know what time it was taken, but then also look at the time code on the underwater footage to be able to match those up as well. Yep. Good point. So, well, this is some preliminary data because, remember I said that science, we have to have a little bit of data in here. And these are plots from the first data collection with panoramic. And it was actually, we tested it, saw that it would work in the June 2021. We actually collected all panoramic data during our St. Mary's November-December 2021 program. We were looking at these data and you can see each day, each day has different color. So the 29th are the yellow dots. You can see the orange dots are the 30th, etc., all the way through the 5 days that are plotted here. And you can see that the whole lagoon is being used. On a given day, you might have a few hot spots, like on the 2nd of December here, you might have a few individuals more around this spot right here, which the water taxi is in the upside here. You can see the palapa over here on the left. But what we also noticed is there's a little bit of human error here. So I really doubt that there's any dolphin walking on the beach over here. And there's a couple of dolphins that probably are not on the dock, as you can see, the yellow here and the green here. And while there may have been a dolphin out here in the channel, because they have seen dolphins in these areas, I doubt any of the dolphins from within the Bailey's key area were out in this spot here. So there's a little bit of error when we're looking at these data, because we're looking at everything from a slight angle with the panoramic photos, as we mentioned. So we started talking about this. John and I were talking about it. We talked about it with a couple other board members and a couple of colleagues, and we started to think, well, what else can we do to improve our accuracy of identifying where these animals are? We'll get to that in just a sec, because I wanted to show you, these are some of the data from 2021 and 2024, so to 2023, where we have different amounts of sample size for the amount of data collected. So we have our baseline that's done before any events happen or any trainers are with the dolphins or anything. We have the time before the data are collected. You can see with the red colors and the orange colors, there's a few hot spots where dolphins are in both areas. And then you can see the during, when these particular graphs are related to when I was in the water. And we have 3 times as many sample points for the during, because it's a longer period of time. It's a 30-minute period. So we have 3 to 4 or 5-minute bouts. And there was a lot of activity over here in this area, in the northeast portion of the main lagoon area. But if the point between this slide and the previous slide, if you look at the after slide, it's very similar to the before slide with respect to the few hotspots where dolphins spent a lot of time. And what that suggests is that me being in the water collecting data didn't impact the before and after use of the lagoon by the dolphins. They might have been around where I was, though we didn't document that yet because they haven't yet coded my place on all of these bits. But we can look at some of the data and say, okay, well, what's going on with them? They're still using the area the same as before versus after as before I collected data. So here we get to how can we maybe do this better and become more accurate with what we're looking at for data collection? And that's where John came into play.
So these tiny little drones are pretty readily available, and they're really, really a good tool. I got into flying about 6 years ago, but it wasn't until, I guess, maybe 2 years ago that we thought maybe this could help out with the research. And my original thought was that I could program the drone to follow Kathleen throughout her study time and do it autonomously. I can do it manually. Turns out I can't do it and just have the drone make those decisions, not with this drone. But we thought that maybe some of this footage would be useful in other ways. Mm-hmm. And so what we ended up doing is coming up with the idea that if we could cover the entire area that's used by Kathleen and the dolphins, there may be able to be some good data pulled out. And we did that original study where I just kind of flew. There was no oversight. It was just, we flew a couple flights. And
January 2023, I think.
Was it 2023? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And brought it home, and then it didn't get looked at for a while until Kathleen and Minot looked at it and went, hey, and a light bulb went on. So,
well, then we had some conversations and said, let's try this out. Did a few conversations with Don, one of the DCP board members. And we decided, okay, we're going to do this in June 2024. Bill Sperling, longtime supporter of DCP, came down to be John's drone assistant.
There's, even though we're not in the United States, I stick to the FAA rules to fly these little drones. They're considered aircrafts, and I do need to get a license. I have a license, mm-hmm. But they require an observer also to be 100% legal. So Bill was my observer, and he was just looking for low-flying aircraft. Predatory birds were another thing, because they will dive on a drone and take it out, and we'd like to not have that happen. But it was a good thing Bill was there, because twice in the week we were there, the military was flying through the area at low altitudes. And while they didn't come through the area we were flying, it was close enough to be like, holy cow, I'm glad we were looking out. So we heard them a long way off before we saw them. But yeah.
So we're going to step out of the presentation just for a little bit and do something a little bit departure here so that John can show you the drone we use. Okay.
This tiny little drone is made by DJI. It's you'd think it's a toy. It weighs 250 grams, 249 grams. It's
Not even a pound.
It's not even a pound.
Wow.
And it shoots in 4K video. And so what that allows me to do is just have the high resolution, trying to figure this out, have these high resolution video files that Kathleen and Minot and the students can look through and see all those 22 dolphins. Yep, the camera's under here.
Oh, wow,
on
very
the
cool.
gimbal, tiny little camera. And so I fly this. I take off when Kathleen gets in the water. Basically, she shouts on to everybody who's involved in the study, in the data collection, and that's when I lift off. And it takes me 2 minutes to get it into position. We've been flying this at 300 feet above ground level, or AGL in aeronautical terms, but 300 feet above the water. And I put it on station, which means I fly it to a spot in the air and I leave it alone. And I just do minor corrections according to the telemetry that I look at on my little flight controller. So
kind of looks like a video game controller.
It does. So I fly the drone with this, and this screen is lit up with the video image from the aircraft and the telemetry from the aircraft. So I know exactly where it is, how high it is, and yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Okay, well, we're going to jump back into the slides and talk more about the data.
Data.
I know. So, there we go. So the main question that we had when we decided to go down and try this the first trip was, could the drone offer a better count of the dolphins? So you remember we have the grid, and this picture was taken at what John just described as an elevation or an AGL.
This was at 397 feet AGL.
So this was a picture that John took in
2018, I think.
No, well, at some point before. Yeah.
It's the first time I brought the drone down.
So which is great. We had our grid to be able to fly and get the plots, etc., which is very cool. And this is also why we take field notes and session notes, so we can go back and confirm all of those details. But what we did is we decided, okay, we know how the drone's going to orient, because John set up the orientation in the first setup on the first day that we collected data in June. And what it turned out is that we needed to rotate our grid. So just when we do the analysis, we rotate this image so that we can sort of match it up to how he's going to fly or how he flew the drone. So we have the image.
We wanted to be as low as possible.
Right.
And so as it turns out, this first image you saw wasn't as low as we could be. So we rotated the drone 90 degrees, basically.
And so the whole point right here, there's my cursors. We wanted to get as much of this main lagoon as possible in the frame of the video from the drone. So this is what we got. So we took a couple of frame grabs here of the video from the drone. And this angle, this is the second day of data collection. This was the angle that gave us the most view of the main lagoon where the dolphins were. And we were John was able to get this at 300-foot AGL. So it's about 100 feet lower than what that grid shot was taken. So you can see the difference between the grid here on the right and the main area here of what is offered. So what's interesting here is, or actually, let's see if so go back one sec. When what we did, so we wanted to sort of match these up from the drone, the screen grabs that we took with when the students were collecting their data. But we needed to be able to have me in view, because one of the things that we have added to this to look to see if my presence in the water might be luring the dolphins or impacting the dolphins there is the students not only get points for all the dolphins, GPS locations for all the dolphins from Google Earth Pro, they're also getting one for me. So because there's a little bit down here of out of view, the first screen grab from the drone footage started, as you can see right here, when I come into view. And so this, where I'm circling the cursor down here at the bottom, that's the array in front of me and my black wetsuit right there. And so we would figure out what the time was right here on the timer, the time code. Thank you. Yeah. The time code in Google QuickTime. And then every minute we'd take a screen grab, and those are the screen grabs that we're using in place of, or in comparison to, the panoramic photos that the students are taking. And so the one change that we had to the student methodology is we asked them not to stand underneath the palapa, the awning of the platforms, or the palapa cover. So you can see here at the palapa, there's a student now outside of the palapa. We have a student right here on a finger dock, and we have a student down here on a finger dock, and right here on a finger dock, where my cursor is when I'm saying right here. And these are the students that are taking their panoramic photos. So this particular screen grab lines up nicely with the panos that the students took. So we can now compare directly the pano photos to the drone footage. And we're doing that now. We have students that are coding the panoramic photos, and the 2 students that are actually coding these data as well. So, and then we'll take the next photo. I can have it. Why is this not going now? Come on. Oh, there we go. There we go. So you can see now I am up here. I'll zoom in a little bit. And what the students will do is, you'll zoom in, you can see me right here. They'll take a GPS point on me. Then look over here to the left. You got 2 dolphins swimming right here. Then where my cursor is, you have another 4 dolphins swimming right here. You have 2 dolphins here, 1 here, and then 1 in infant position, because you have, you have a fluke, right? 2 flukes right there. You have another 2 dolphins right here. And then down here in the bottom, you have another dolphin that's sort of in the sand area right there. So you can look at these data and scan through and look up here at platform, finger dock 1, you have a couple of dolphins right here.
In the hot spot.
In the hot spot. They seem to like this particular spot here, is what the data are showing. So and this is how you would scan using Google Earth Pro and GPS, is you'd set everything up and you would lay the grid over this, and then you just count and get the dolphins to what's going on. So rather than having to scroll through a pano, you can look straight down, which means you're not just able to get dolphins that are at the surface, because the water is so clear. You can actually look to see, like these dolphins are all underwater. They're not at the surface, but we can still count them. So we know how many dolphins might be in the main lagoon, maybe 18, 19, or maybe some animals are in the back doing other programs, depending on when we're doing things. We'll know how many dolphins are there, and we can count them and know that we have everybody accounted for who's in the main lagoon when we're looking at these data, which I think is cool. So here's another example of one of the scans that we did. You can see I have myself right there and several dolphins, and then you can zoom in a little bit more, and you can see you have some dolphins around me right here. If I zoom in even more, you can tell that you have a dolphin here, you have 2 dolphins here, you have 1 dolphin up here to the side of platform 1. And then you have 1 on the rub rope. You have another 1 underwater here, another 1 in front of this student, who I must say, this student is doing exactly what she's supposed to do by not interacting with the dolphins, which I know is very difficult for students in the field. We also have several dolphins over here as you look in the shallow right here, and then also at the bottom of this image right here. So this gives us much more view of the animals that are in view for what we're looking at. And this is how the drone data are analyzed. And this was, thankfully, Sierra and Lexi sent me a couple of photos, and they work on this on the desktop computer. They have the drone screen grabs that we don't go through the whole video. We want to make sure that we're using exactly the same footage and the same spots. So we have 1 still photo that's pulled from the video. We lay over the grid. We have a layer of that we can put into a Word document, laid over the grid and the image, and then they can count the dolphins in the image. And you can see in this one that there's a couple of dolphins right here in their image, and you have these animals in C1 and these animals in C2. And now they can count, know where they are, and put that information into the Excel file to get the details. And because they're using Google Earth Pro, they can just copy and paste. We figured out how to do it where they didn't have to retype it. They can just copy and paste the latitude and longitude. Once the Excel file is complete, then we'll provide that file to Melissa, and she will run the GIS, and we will have our plots of where the dolphins are, given the before, during, and after, and the baseline data collection, as well as when we study them for any other programs, which is pretty cool. But what we realized also, at least Mano and I did when we started looking at this, is we can use these data not just for space use, because we can actually observe what's going on behaviorally with the animals. And yes, it's true, we can actually track individuals. So if I zoom in to this, you'll see that Mano has taken a couple of these screen grabs, and she has labeled which dolphin is which. And she hasn't just randomly done this. We can actually identify these animals based on several of the scars and the marks, or the shapes of their fluke, or their pectoral fins, because you can see them, or maybe different markings on their body when the visibility is really clear and you can see into what's going on. And you can see we have that in several of the different spots right here. And then we have another image right here. You can see there's a lot of dolphins off to the side right here. We have those names. One of the things that's now available with a lot of research, animal research, at least with movements and distribution and some simple behavioral research, is using, and I can't believe I'm really going to promote this and say this, but using computers and a form of AI to track individuals. The computer software is not yet able to code and look at behaviors and interactions, but it can track movements of animals, and you can see how animals are moving in a particular area. So we're talking with someone who does some of that coding to see if it's possible to follow these individuals. And one of the things that John and I talked about, one of the reasons that couldn't completely always track me, is because when we go underwater, you can't really, the animal might be lost from the tracking, or the drone might not be able to follow that individual because they're disappeared, and then they'd have to pick them up again wherever they were, and it might not be able to follow that because of the distinction and the contrast between the water and some of these areas underwater is not that good compared to the animals or to me in my black wetsuit. John did recently suggest that I should get a mean green wetsuit and just be a giant green thing underwater, but I'm not sure about that.
It is possible that that would make tracking with the drone doable.
Yeah, but that's a ways off. We'll see about that. So now what I wanted to do is just show you what we can do with some of that footage and some of the details. And the so when we're underwater, we don't have per se a surface camera, but we have the drone now to do this. And we have this video right here. Then the two videos on the bottom, the left is the forward-facing camera that I have on the top of the array looking forward. And then we did add a camera looking back as well. So there's two GoPros on the array, plus the array camera, and then the drone footage in there. We only have the three files right now to look at. And so what I wanted to do is play some of this. You don't have to worry too much about the audio because I'm going to be talking over it. But John was able, with his editing software, to sync these videos up to one another. And so if you're, I don't want to zoom in too much because you won't see everything. But if I look at the timing and I come all the way up to here, which is at 1 minute and 29 seconds roughly, because I've already looked at this, and you'll see down, if you're looking right here, I am now coming into view right about here. You can see where the little green hand is. I'm above that, swimming into view. So you can see that I still haven't seen any dolphins yet. This is one of the sessions later or one of the data collection sessions later in the week. And I think the dolphins were bored with me at that point. I didn't see them until a few minutes into the session. And I'm usually collecting data for a 30-minute session. So if I take this and I come up to roughly 2 minutes and here we go, about 46, 45, you can see we have animals swimming up towards me, and you can see animals on the drone footage swimming towards me as well. So the video on the left is what I'm seeing while I'm recording. The video on the left is occasionally there's dolphins behind me. Sometimes they think I'm a toy, and so they'll check things out. And then we get the full view with the drone footage right now. So we can really sync all of these perspectives up and get a more complete picture about what's going on before the dolphins come into my frame of view and when they go out of it. Sorry.
Yes, we have an errant beagle. So that's why I keep turning around. It's not ready to sleep yet.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail on these video clips. We can maybe do another chat about that another time, Kel, when we have more data going. But I wanted to give you the perspective of these three angles for what we're looking at. You can see the dolphins swimming around up here. It was a relatively good visibility day. So there we go. So in exciting news, the drone that John used to collect data with in June, we had the regular normal camera on it.
Well, it's always going to have the same camera with a standard lens.
Yep.
Next year, since we've acquired a wide angle lens, we'll be able to fly about 100 feet lower.
Yep.
So these clips are examples where you can see there's 4 pictures. In the telemetry here, in the lower right, you see the H. So next to it, there's a 301 foot, and then on the lower pictures, there's a 206 foot. So you can see the difference between how wide the image is. So we're basically going to be able to fly 1/3 lower, which will be easier to identify the dolphins.
Yep.
With this new lens, we may be able to track them autonomously if we decide to do that. If we want to see like what Kathleen is doing and with her focal follows, we might be able to task the drone to do that, to fly low enough and not lose her. So we'll see. It's a new thing.
And these images were taken once the wide angle lens came after data collection in June, and we went to the air park that John flies to test it out to see what the difference was, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, this is an air park that I join just to keep my skills up. So I try to fly once a week.
Cool. Well, we did want to say, occasional feline assistance. So you can see in this particular image that Bill is doing his job watching the drone, as is Susie, the calico. That there's 3 cats that live on Bailey's Key, and they're siblings. Susie is the female. She can see her right here. And John is also doing his job by watching the controller and seeing the drone as it's coming down to land. And then, of course, once it lands, Bill needs to document it. John confirms everything's good, and all 3 cats are paying attention. Susie is the most inquisitive, close in. Then you have Primo, the orange tabby, behind her. And way in the back, the one that's a little more skittish is Big Boy. He just kind of keeps an eye on what's going on. So, but they greet us every morning and maybe have some sort of commentary on the research. We don't know. But I think that's about all we wanted to share tonight.
I think so.
Yeah.
That was lovely. Thank you. And
Thank you.
everyone, if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. I'm going to just switch over to our wrap up slides while people submit their last questions, and then we'll get to them. This was a deep dive. So the data were there. The nerdy terms were included a little longer. You can find all of the recordings of past webinars, both our deep dives and our dolphin lessons, right on our website. Just look under the Knowledge Hub. You can also get them on YouTube and Vimeo if you prefer. And if you've watched all of our deep dives and all of our dolphin lessons and you still need more dolphin content, of course, make sure that you've listened to all of the episodes of our podcast, the Dolphin Pod. Those are also available directly on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, DCP is a nonprofit, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't remind people how you could support DCP. One of our programs is to become a dolphin protector. You can also purchase cool DCP merchandise on our website. If you're listening live or in the end of 2024, right now, every purchase from our online store will come with a free DCP trading card. We also have some other promos coming up. 'Tis the season. So check out our social media and our website for a list of all of those promos. You can actually join Kathleen at RIMS in Roatan on a DCP Eco Tour. So certainly check those out. And even just following along, sharing our social media posts, spreading the word about dolphin science and conservation is a fantastic way to support us. So with that, I'm going to ask the last question first. Have the cats ever gone after the drone? Like when you're like, is it landing on the dock or are you grabbing it? I added that part to the question, but someone is wondering if the cats are always that chill or if they're ever trying to get the drone.
Well, they've only one of them has, I don't know if it was gone after it, but they were a little too curious the first time we flew it down there. And I think now I've flown it enough and it's not too interesting anymore. They just kind of come out for the camaraderie and the occasional kitty treat.
Yes,
but we do land it on the dock. We try not to have to grab it. So we have enough space there to do that, even if it's windy.
And both the only times that the cats show a lot of interest in anything that we're doing is when Bill or Minot are at the gazebo area, because they both bring treats and they're both working at training the cats. I stay out of it because I'm not a cat trainer and I'm barely a dog trainer. So
you mentioned wind, so we'll jump to that question. Have you ever had times where conditions allowed Kathleen in the water and students on the dock, but you weren't able to fly?
We've had, I think we've had weather that included rain and wind once. And years ago, when I was first flying down there, I was actually flying for the RIMS documentary that I made. And I set the drone down on the dock and it was really windy. And I just chose a time and a gust of wind came up. It hit the dock on 3 legs and blew it off the dock into the water. And I got to see the drone heading for the bottom, flashing angry red lights all the way down to the coral head that it rested on.
And jumped in and got it.
Yeah, I jumped in and got it, but that drone was dead.
Yeah.
So, but the card, they don't like to swim.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
yep.
Anyway, yeah, it's we have to be careful with these little drones because they're super light.
Yeah. And I didn't even think about like that it's not safe when it lands. Like you'd think, whew, landed it.
Yeah.
And that
it's too windy. Like if wind comes up and you're flying, it'll actually sense wind. And if it thinks it's too much wind for it, it'll tell you, and I'll get that read in my telemetry. And I have brought it down a couple of times and just said it's not worth it.
And that's why you chose the widest dock for takeoff and landing, because there's more space. That circle is in the center of the dock as its target spot to take off and land.
It's pretty good. If I lift off from the center of that little circle, and it'll generally come down, not perfect center, but it'll be touching that circle. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. 2 different questions, but to me they were related, so I'm going to ask them at the same time. One question was whether or not the dolphins react to the drone, whether it's the sound or the shadow. And then question later on came in on whether or not you anticipate a change in that or their ability to notice it when you shift from 300 feet to 200 feet.
Well, from my standpoint, I can barely hear the drone when it's 50 feet overhead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really little. I mean, you can see this drone is how's that? I mean, it's smaller than two of my hands put together. Where am I? Out here. So really doesn't create any sort of shadow. Sometimes in drone imagery, you can see a shadow, but it's usually guys like me that are critical about the picture that say, hey, drone shadow. It's like seeing your own shadow in a shot you did. I don't think they react to it at all. I don't think they
Mm-hmm.
are bothered in the least.
I couldn't hear it in the when my head was at the surface and he was flying. I couldn't hear the drone when it was at the 300 feet. If I hear it at the 200 feet, I'll let him know. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see nobody on the dock, Minot and the students didn't say that they saw the dolphins paying attention to or reacting to this drone. I know there's been
Mm-hmm.
studies that have looked at dolphin responses to different drones. To the Jason Bruck has done some of that work and looking at the noises and the height that it flies at and the size of the drone and the blades and the rotors and
the big heavy lift drones are really noisy,
and they are heard,
and they have a force downwind 30 feet in the air. You can feel the thrust.
But this one, I mean, when you were bringing it down, we could hear it, but I never looked at what the height was, and so
it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
It's really I can't hear it at height. I mean, I can start to hear it at maybe 50 or 100 feet, but I don't think they can hear it.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank
see.
you. And I think if people are interested, I believe Dr. Bruck talked about drone heights and best use and the importance of scientists asking those questions before they just assume drones out in the field are not having any impact. I think we have a recorded webinar on that if you're interested in it. Oh.
And that question's important when you have drones that are taking samples, like blow samples, because you're flying, feet above, not tens of feet, less than tens of feet above an animal to get a sample. But
those are big
one,
drones.
not so much,
to lift that equipment. Those are those heavy lift drones. I mean, to fly something like your DSLR, that takes a heavy lift drone. That's not a little drone, so it's very noisy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What is the battery life and how does that compare to Kathleen's sessions in the water? Like, are you able to record the whole 30-minute session or is the drone just a snippet?
I can record with this drone, I can record usually the whole session. It's tight. Sometimes I'll have to bring it in. I don't like to push it because I've also lost a drone, crashed a drone because of the battery failure. And even though it said I had plenty of battery left, the battery didn't hold up. So I don't like to push it. I have a 30% limit, and then I'm really on edge. And when I see her heading back to where she gets out, that's about when I'm getting ready to come back. And if I need to pull it down sooner, I will.
Mm-hmm. That was the limit. That was one of the reasons why we didn't actually do data collection with the drone until in the last year or two, because the batteries only early on when you were flying, the batteries only lasted like 15 minutes and the session is 30 minutes. So but that does give us a limiting factor when you can record for 30-40 minutes. So we're getting the session that I'm in, but we're not getting the
Mhm.
before 5 minute period, and we're not getting the after 5 minute period. So, but that's okay because those two sessions will be collected the same way with the students and the panos. And so this first trip, the June data was a proof of concept. We're almost done coding the data, and then we can do the comparison and say, okay, did this, does this match up? Do we see what we have here?
And the
Yeah.
new version of this drone, which is 2 years old now, actually flies for about 10 minutes longer. But it's
Mhm.
a bit of a pricey upgrade to do two drones.
Yeah.
It's probably $4,000 by the time you buy the lenses and two drones and the batteries and such.
Yeah.
So, losing a few minutes at the end on some of the sessions, not all of them,
Yeah.
I think we're good for now until they come out with something that's 5 or 6K, and then we have that super high resolution.
Yeah.
Then maybe we'll talk about
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Awesome. The last question, sorry, John, and sorry,
No,
drone.
that's
It
okay.
doesn't have anything to do with the drones. Someone was asking about the safe zone,
Uh-huh.
Kathleen, that you showed at the beginning of the talk, and
Yep.
wondered if that had the same depth profile, depth options for the dolphins as the rest of the lagoon.
Parts of it do and parts of it don't. So the lagoon area, the parts that were close to the shore on the opposite side from the water taxi, that actually goes right up to the beach. So that's where people walk into the water to do the encounters, and they stand, depending on their height, they stand in water that's thigh to waist, and for some people chest deep when they're standing there meeting the dolphins. And so that's a shallow sandy area. The areas around the nets and the dock area are deeper, but they are shallower by the water taxi and then go out. So I would say it's probably about 15 feet deep near the water taxi, and then it can get out to about 24 feet deep in the far corner over where I get in the water. So it's not appreciably or maybe significantly different. It is a shallower area. There is seagrass, there is coral heads, and there's sand in those areas. For comparison, the depth profile at rims in the main lagoon is probably very similar to what the dolphins experience along the coast of Florida in Sarasota Bay, especially with the shallow areas, and then you have some areas that are deeper in where they're found.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to our live listeners. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. Thank you to everyone listening to this recording. And most especially, thank you to Dr. Kathleen and John for your time. And
You're welcome.
thank you to the Beagles for
Yes.
your cooperation. I don't know if they
Well,
can hear
sort of.
us, but they did a lovely job overall.
Yep.
Kudos to them. And yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your evening, your day, wherever you are. And we hope to see everyone at another Dolphin Communication Project webinar another time. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Cal. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.